Good afternoon, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you again for coming back. I always appreciate you spending time, a little bit time with me. Today is May the 4th, 2022. So I have some news to share with you. The first one is United Nations Chief message, Antonio Guterres' message on World Freedom Press Day. I will start with that one. Then I have also US President Joe Biden statement on the same issue, and also Ethiopia's position in the freedom of the press uh, compared with 180 countries, and our US position too. It is also alarming, and Eritrea included in a 10 worst country in the world press freedom for journalists. Very, very bad place to work. Plus, I have two press release. One is from Oromo Federalist Congress, and one is Congress for Somali Causes. And share a couple of videos. So thank you again for coming back. Let's start with Antonio Guterres' message for World Freedom Day.
As Freedom Day, we shine a spotlight on the essential work of journalists and other media workers who seek transparency and accountability from those in power, often at great personal risk. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, many media workers have been on the front lines, providing accurate, science-based reporting to inform decision makers and save lives. At the same time, journalists who cover climate, biodiversity, and pollution have succeeded in bringing global attention to this triple planetary crisis. But the threats to the freedom of journalists and media workers are growing by the day. From global health to the climate crisis, corruption, and human rights abuses, they face increased politicization of their work and attempts to silence them from many sides. Digital technology has democratized access to information, but it has also created serious challenges. The business model of many social media platforms are based not on increasing access to accurate reporting, but on increasing engagement, which often means provoking outrage and spreading lies. Media workers in war zones are threatened not only by bombs and bullets, but by the weapons of falsification and disinformation that accompany modern warfare. They may be attacked as the enemy, accused of espionage, detained, or killed, simply for doing their jobs. Digital technology also makes censorship even easier. Many journalists and editors around the world are at constant risk of their programs and reports being taken offline. And digital technology creates new channels for oppression and abuse. Women journalists are at particular risk of online harassment and violence. UNESCO found that nearly 3 in 4 women respondents had experienced online violence. Hacking and illegal surveillance also prevent journalists from doing their jobs. The methods and tools change, but the goal of discrediting the media and covering up the truth remains the same as ever. And the results are also the same. People and societies that are unable to distinguish fact from fiction and can be manipulating in horrifying ways. Without freedom of the press, there are no real democratic societies. Without freedom of the press, there is no freedom. The United Nations is working to support journalists and media workers everywhere. 10 years ago, we established a plan of action on the safety of journalists to protect media workers and end the impunity for crimes committed against them. On World Press Freedom Day, we honor the essential work of the media in speaking truth to power, exposing lies, and building strong, resilient institutions and societies. We call on governments, media organizations, and technology companies everywhere to support these crucial efforts. Thank you.
Okay, so that is
For over 60 years, workers have tried to keep
message
when they've been injured.
for
There's a
World
good reason. We handle own
Press Freedom Day. By the way, it was yesterday. I didn't have time to record it. The World's Freedom Day was yesterday. So I have a couple of videos at the end of the reading material. So there is he's talking about all the challenges the journalists are facing, especially women journalists, and the technology is also another challenge instead of the government oppression against media journalists. Let's see what the President Joe Biden said on this same day. And I have about Ethiopia and other countries ranking from 180 countries. A statement by President Joe Biden on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day 2022. We live in a perilous times for press freedom. At least 11 journalists have been killed in Ukraine in recent weeks. Another 11 have been wounded by gunfire. Others have been kidnapped and assaulted, and at least one remains missing. In Russia, the Kremlin has tightened its vice grip on civil society, including through passage of disinformation law intended to silence those speaking the truth. Facing the choice of repression and censorship or the threat of retribution, Russian journalists and other members of the media have made the difficult choice to flee their country. This is the price media workers and their families are paying to tell us the story of Putin's unjust and brutal war in Ukraine. And it is the price paid around the world by journalists who have dedicated their lives to keep the world informed and share the truth. Journalists cover war, expose corruption, document environmental damage, lift up the marginalized, champion our communities, and hold the powerful to account. And for this, too often they are killed, jailed, raped, threatened, and harassed. Women journalists, long a minority in the newsroom, are disproportionately targeted on and offline in these attacks. In the United States, national and local media are covering a once-in-a-century pandemic, a generational reckoning on race, and an existential threat of climate change. The free press is not the enemy of the people. Quite the opposite. When driven by a quest to illuminate and educate, not inflame or entertain, the free press is the guardian of truth. Over the past 5 years, UNESCO estimates that 85% of the world's population have experienced a decline in press freedom. That is why at the first summit for democracy last December, I announced a series of new initiatives, from new programs to protect journalists from spurious lawsuits, to seed funding for the International Fund for the Public Interest Media, to expanded support for at-risk reporters, that elevate a renewed commitment by the United States to champion fact-based reporting and the independent media globally. Foreign governments, civil society, and the private sector also have an important role to play in sustaining this vital work, and the United States stands ready to be a partner in all these efforts. Collectively, we can and must do more to protect and sustain independent media and to hold to account those that seek to silence voices essential to transparent, trustworthy, and responsive governance. On this World on this World Press Freedom Day, I honor the courage and sacrifice of journalists around the world and commend all those who strive to inform, educate, and enlighten. The work of freedom and independent media matters now more than ever. President Joe Biden. This one is about a little bit about press freedom in Ethiopia under Abiy administration. If you remember when he came to power in 2018, he promised a lot of things. Now all that promise is broken. Ethiopia is a different place under his leadership. Plus the ranking of some countries, including the United States, in the World Press Freedom Edition or Index. Press freedom in Ethiopia is in a grave danger. Journalists are arbitrarily detained, killed, tortured, denied family and lawyer visitation, denied due process, their properties confiscated, and their family threatened. Oh man, why? Why is this? Why? And their family threatened and intimidated by security forces and government authorities. Journalists kidnapped by plainclothes officers or undercover security forces and detained in undisclosed location like journalist Gobaze Sisai of Yenya TV. The Ethiopian government increases production costs like printing material and others, increased taxation, infrastructure pricing, denied journalists access to information, and equal opportunity for advertisement to limit competitiveness of alternative media. So if you are watching Ethiopian media, especially the access given to government media and some private media like SAT is different than those independent media. For example, Masai Mekonnen of ESAT, before they, disintegrated into a different media now, he was given total access to interview any Prosperity Party official, regional and federal. Free access, no restriction. He can interview the army chief, he can interview Addis Ababa mayor, he can interview Amara regional states, anybody, Somali regional state head, any. That kind of access should be given to independent media too. So no limiting access according to free press. So that is happening in Ethiopia. If the government like you, they will give you, open the door for everything. If they don't like you, they will arrest you, they will torture you, they will deny you access to information. Ethiopian government is still holding for more than a year the following journalists, and by fabricating life-threatening cases like dismantling legally empowered government against them. Bikila Ammanu, Dachasa Wirtu Bati, Dasu Dula, and others still in jail and denied due process for more than a year. Press freedom under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is rolling backward in a very dangerous scale. All the promises he made in 2018, non-existent today. It's a shame, non-existent. Ethiopia is ranked at 114 from 180 countries in 2022 edition of Reporters Without Borders Index. In this report, Eritrea is 179, grouped with 10 worst countries for media freedom like North Korea, Iran, and China. It's only North Korea is next to Eritrea, almost the last one. North Korea is 118, Eritrea is 179. And the Prime Minister was working with Eritrean government to wage a war and to spread that kind of democracy into Ethiopia. Now a little bit air is coming between them, air bubble. So it's that kind of friendship is loose now. Eritrea is working with Amara Regional, Fano forces, and against the Prime Minister now. That friendship is, I think, is ended. So Eritrea is 179 next to North Korea. Ethiopia is 114. Ethiopia is also in a very low level. Norway, number 1. Denmark, number 2. And Sweden, number 3 in press freedom. Journalists will enjoy press freedom working in Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. These are the best places for journalists. What is putting the United States at 42 from 180 countries? We are the land of freedom. We are the land of freedom, freedom of expression. And we have many democracy in this country. Why we are at 42 level? So this we must ask ourselves and do better in press freedom in the United States. That's, I think, we should come at least number 4 next to Sweden, or be number 1. So, but something is wrong. It indicates something is wrong. I don't know. Some challenge in press freedom in the United States. That's I don't see that much journalists arrested, detained, and abused, but I think that issue must be discovered, and we should do better in a world stage. So shame on the United States on this becoming 42 level. That's too low for the United States, for the world's economic country. Okay, let's go to Oromo Federalist Congress press statement on the situation, on the ongoing war in total war against Oromos in Oromia region, plus those Fano forces crossing border into Oromia and burning and killing Oromos. And let's say, failure to protect innocent civilians is tantamount to failure of the system. Statement from the Oromo Federalist Congress, OFC, on current situation. Currently, government security forces are conducting a campaign to destroy the Oromo Liberation Army, which they call OLF Shane, a campaign led by the principle of drying the sea to catch fish. A hidden agenda from the world view is being carried out in various parts of Oromia and of the country, particularly in the 4 Wallagga zones: West Shore, North Shore, and East Shore, West Arsi, East Guji, West Guji, Borana zones of Oromia, and Oromo Nationality Zone in Amara region, and Matakal zone, and its surroundings in Benishangul Gumuz region. killing civilians, burning homes, looting and destroying property, imprisoning and torturing, sometimes killing parents on alleged affiliation of their children with OLA, Oromo Liberation Army, has become commonplace. All these are the continued abuses, atrocities carried out by Ethiopian government in Oromia region. More recently, drone and helicopter strikes have been carried out by government forces in connection with their campaign. Mounting evidence from the victims suggests that it is leading to the loss of many civilian lives, the destruction of homes and property, and the displacement of survivors. This illustrates the level of violence carried out against civilians in the Oromia region in the name of rooting out the Shane group. Massive and indiscriminate airstrike carried out by government forces this week on civilians in West Shore, Abuna Gundabarat district has resulted in the deaths of more than 30 civilians and caused severe property damage and the displacement of 400 civilians. On April 22, 2022, more than 40 civilians were summarily killed by Oromia Special Force in West Shore, Berga district. On the same day, 22 civilians were killed by government forces in West Guji zone in regional state of Oromia. 11 civilians were killed by government forces this week in East Shore, Fantale district. No less than the regular government security forces, the Fano, an extremist Amara nationalist group backed by the Amara regional government, has forcibly raided various parts of Oromia, carried out massacres, burned houses, and looted crops. Particularly in West Shore Zone, Nono district, members of the group 13 Oromos were massacred in Deno district at the same dawn by the Fano group. Similarly, the extremist group shot and killed 11 innocent Oromo farmers in Jarte district of Horoguduru, Wallagga zone. On April 16, 2022, the group massacred 115 innocent Oromos in Kiramu district, East Wallagga zone, and looted homes and property. Residents of more than 10 Kabbales have been displaced and scattered without shelter. In Benishangul Gumuz region, more than 15 Oromo civilians were killed and more than 100 were abducted in an orchestrated attack by Fano and Amara special forces. In all, more than 278 civilians were massacred only in the last few days. 278 civilians in just 1 week, less than few days. April 16 to 29, in a joint operation by the government and the extremist Fano group in Oromia. On the other hand, more than 20 people have been killed and dozens more injured in a series of attacks on Muslims following the funeral of prominent individual in Gondar on April 26, 2022. Following the Gondar attack, Christians' religious institutions were also attacked in Warabe town in SNNP region. At the root of these problems is the creation of an principled relationship between the state and the religion, which the government has pursued over years and which violates the principles of religious freedom and the separation of state and the religious enshrined in the Constitution. This has created an atmosphere in which citizens of different faiths are often feeling pushed aside by the government and subjected to unfair treatment. It has also created an atmosphere of unhealthy competition among followers of various religions. In the same way, instead of expediting and prosecuting extremists who have harmed civilians on several previous occasions under the guise of religion, the cover-up and denying attention to the matter has allowed the forces to destruction to become bold and commit more crimes. Beyond that, there is a tendency for some group to use a religion as a political tool. Religious hatred propagated by various media outlets and following the aftermath of the northern Ethiopia war, a larger number of organized and armed irregular groups had mushroomed in the Amara region, which posed a number of significant security threats. In these, in these combustible conditions, minor personal conflicts that arose had the potential to change their nature and easily escalate into catastrophic inter-religious conflict. Ignoring such a situation in a country that has been plagued by political infighting groups is an irresponsible act that invites more conflict and prolongs the suffering of our peoples. The Oromo Federalist Congress of ECO strongly condemns violent acts that are religiously motivated or that are uh, by narrated by government justice, as well as the failure to fulfill the obligation to protect innocent citizens, is a sign of the failure of the system. Expressing deep sorrow for the victims of these shameful attacks, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and to the people of our country. The Oromo Federalist Congress OFC urges the government to take immediate action on the following issues so that our country can survive the impending catastrophe. 1. In the ongoing war against armed groups, government security forces must fulfill their duty to protect civilians and take care of civilians in all their actions. We call on the government to bring to justice those security forces that harmed civilians in violation of the law. 2. To end the ongoing conflict with armed groups and to resolve the issue peacefully. We repeat our urge for the government to immediately call a ceasefire and enter into negotiations. 3. In the aftermath of the war in the Amara region, a highly organized and harmful informal force was created by Amara extremists. This group is becoming a threat to peace in the region and to the neighboring states too. However, as the regional government is reluctant to take action, we call on the federal government to provide immediate and legal solutions. 4. We call for an international neutral inquiry into the massacre of civilians in various parts of Oromia. This is very important, but Abiy will not allow to happen this. 5. We call upon all government bodies to discharge their duties of protecting the safety of citizens, prevention of religiously motivated attack, immediately investigating and prosecuting the perpetrators. We would like to remind the government that the relationship it has with various religious groups should be balanced in a way that respects the principles of religious freedom and the separation of state and the religious enshrined in the constitution. 6. In reporting attacks in different places, the country's media outlets should refrain from partisanship or cover up the aggravated the problem and rather report in a balanced and impartial manner. We call on them to work for the promotion of the values of peace and respect among the peoples. 7. We call on the religious leaders to do their best part by continuing to educate their followers on the basic principles of peace and brotherhood so that they do not listen to the extremists and avoid extremism and religious hatred. Oromo Federalist Congress, OFC, 1st May 2022, Finfinne. So that's very long, very essential press release from OFC, and especially on the massacre happening in Oromia under this prime minister. And please, the international communities, please pay attention what is happening in Oromia. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Many unreported. Internet is shut down. Telephone is shut down. All social media is shut down. We don't hear that much. So many people are suffering. People are dying. People are burning while they are in their house. So I call upon international community to pay serious attention in Oromia, Ethiopia. Just they are doing it in Ukraine or in northern part of Ethiopia. So please. So okay, this is the last part of the reading for the reading today. This is Congress for Somali Cause condemn military operation in Oromia, calls for peace. The Congress for Somali Cause, CSC, released a statement condemning what it called the government's relentless military operation in the Oromia region. The statement said that many lives have been lost as a result and accused the government of utilizing multiple forms of weaponry, including drones and aerial gunships in heavily populated areas. The Congress underscored that such a situation has caused political disarray and economic dilemmas for the entire country. The Congress linked the instability to what it believes is a slide away from the high expectations that were set nationally and globally at the beginning of the new administration, underlining that this said hope was dashed. The presser argued that conflict erupted all over the country, including the Oromia region. In a specific mention of the Oromia region, it went on to denounce what expressed as a violent campaign in Oromia, something which the presser said has been happening in the past but increased in scale and intensity more recently. In reference to these intensified military operations in the regional state, CSC called upon the Somali regional government to not take sides in the campaign. Furthermore, the presser emphasized that finding a peaceful way to live with human dignity The statement also asked the government to reconsider its action via vis the slippery slope the country is on. The statement concluded by saying Congress for Somali Causes is clearly and loudly stating that democratizing Ethiopia as a multinational state is the only way and the right direction for the country. So we appreciate Congress for Somali Causes. The other political parties, so many political parties are silent and they are happy on the bloodshed going on in Oromia region. So, and we appreciate for Congress for Somali Cause for expressing their concern, for calling for cessation of hostilities, and for calling for multinational democratic way and peaceful resolution for this conflict instead of just continuing the war and continuing the bloodshed. And Abiy Ahmed, I don't know when he's gonna be satisfied with all the bloodshed he caused in that country. When will be the end? When he say enough is enough, it is time for me to leave. When he gonna say? The country is full of blood, and his hand is full of blood, and of too much problem created under, whether it come to press freedom, inflation, international relation, and all other issues, unemployment, no hope for young children in that country. So when is going to be enough for him? You know, I'm just waiting for that day. And please, the international community, put pressure on this government. Don't be misled by his statements and what he's telling you about the North. This is just waiting for the opportunity to stay in power and use the power and the weaponry he got from Turkey or other countries and destroy life, continue destroy life. So thank you, Addis Standard, for these two stories. And let's conclude today's presentation with a couple of short videos. Let's see. There we go. There we go. One is about the arrest of 176 people in Addis Ababa following the Eid celebration.
Memorial Museum and some businesses have been damaged in Addis Ababa after clashes between police and Muslims celebrating the end of the Ramadan broke out on Monday. The incident occurred outside the International Stadium in the center of the Ethiopian capital, where Eid al-Fitr prayers were taking place. All the glass of the museum is shattered. A car that was used by former head of state Mengistu Haile Mariam, which is now the property of the museum, is damaged. The minibus used for transportation is also vandalized. The cafe, the computer shop, and the bookshop, which are administered by the museum, have been destroyed. 76 suspects have already been arrested. A member of the Ethiopian High Council of Islamic Affairs reported that people at the scene told him that a policeman accidentally fired a round of tear gas, which triggered a confrontation. The protesters came from outside, throwing stones and shattering the glasses. Then they smashed the chairs and tables in the garden. They continued and entered inside the cafe, smashed the TV and many pieces of equipment inside.
AFP journalists said some demonstrators shouted justice for Gondar. At least 20 Muslims were killed a week ago in the northern city of Gondar while attending a funeral.
Thousands gathered outside the Supreme Court on Tuesday afternoon to protest the leaked draft opinion that was reported to have the support of 5 conservative justices, an opinion that concludes that since those who wrote the Constitution did not explicitly protect women's reproductive rights, then previous judgments enshrining a woman's right to choose had no basis in the law.
I thought we were long past that point. It was protested about how many decades ago, but it's terrifying.
Just a handful of anti-abortion rights protesters were outside the court too.
I say abortion is murder.
But for those seeking to end abortion access, this has been the goal since 1973, when justices ruled in favor of women's reproductive rights in the case of Roe v. Wade.
Justice Roberts said that that was an authentic draft, so we're very happy to hear that, and we're hopeful that the High Court will stay with that draft, and that will be the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade.
The White House says it is prepared for whatever the actual verdict is, but the president warned that the reasoning underpinning the draft opinion has far-reaching implications.
It basically says all the decisions related to your private life, who you marry, whether or not you decide to conceive a child or not, whether or not you can have an abortion, a range of other decisions, whether or not how you raise your child. What does this do? Does this mean that in Florida they can decide they're going to pass a law saying that same-sex marriage is not permissible?
The U.S. has the worst maternal mortality rate in the industrialized world. Those here are worried that terrible metric could now deteriorate even further.
The sign was inspired by conversations with many women today. I don't think that anybody has an idea of what the real-world consequences are, and especially those who are in a position of privilege, like everybody on the Supreme Court, myself included in that. There's a lot of really potential for harm.
But there was hope too. The polls have consistently shown 70% of Americans are against outlawing abortion. The Democrats seem to be hoping for a bump in voter turnout in November's midterm elections from those who support female reproductive rights. But there is an awareness here that in the past, when the Democrats have had the opportunity to codify a woman's right to choose, they failed to do so. Shia Bertansi, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Okay, thank you, Al Jazeera, for sharing that news. So that's also a very hot topic in the United States: abortion right and anti-abortion group, and the decision might come according to the information, maybe June or July. That's a very tough one to overturn long state decision. So, be part of the discussion, say something. So, on the arrest of 76 individuals in Addis Ababa, the government blamed external forces and internal terrorist group. But I don't think is that the issue. The issue is the government incapable of handling the governing system and creating religious tension. Those people are expressing their grievances. What happened in Gondar, the 22 Muslims massacred. So it's nothing is about external forces, nothing. It's not external enemy. The enemy is inside the government, and the government is not handling the governing system. It's a failure in multiple phases. When it comes to security, international relations, controlling inflation, many things. Abiy Ahmed is a failure, I said repeatedly many times, and he is still dead and still causing bloodshed in Oromia region now, plus in other regions. So we need, as I said, divine intervention, immediate divine intervention, and also we beg on the international community to do something about this, to call on this prime minister to resign and call for transitional government in that country. before he killed all of them, before he killed all Ethiopians, really. And today is Oromia, tomorrow maybe southern nationalities, or maybe other part. So it's chaos everywhere. Talked about different press release last time from different religion. This is an indication of the country is very bad shape and unstable for investment, and there is no hope for generation. So that's all I'm gonna say for today. I will be back with other news and update. Thank you for taking the time with me. Be safe and so long, everyone.